Hey everyone, my name is Catherine and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about some of my favorite things and combine them into a video, which is travel but also reading. So I've been on such a reading kick and I thought why not talk about books that I've been really into over the last year or two that have a component of travel to them, whether it be just a book on a different culture or a book that actually has a person traveling. I have a mix in here of nonfiction, of fiction, memoirs, and I thought it would just be great to go over them. Let's just get straight into it. I have the list of the books on my phone, so if I'm looking down, that is why. The first book, in no particular order, is Migrations. I also particularly have an interest in sustainability, conservation, climate change, all that in general. It is about a woman that is on a quest to go to Greenland and do some work within conservation, and it goes into a lot of just detail about her life. I'm not gonna lie, it gets kind of sad. It is a bit of a sad book, but it's also a very mesmerizing book, and I just loved reading about a part of the world that not many books are set in, which is Greenland, and again the conservation aspect to it as well. The next one is a nonfiction book called Prisoners of Geography by Tim Marshall. I did enjoy this book, and he has a bunch of other books as well that I want to get around to reading. I loved the way that this book was formatted. It was about 10 chapters, I want to say, and each chapter, the title of it was just the country. So it was like Russia, China, United States, Canada, and you read a not so long chapter about each country or region of the world, and it just goes into the history of that country and its relations with other countries, where it is today, how it got to be where it is today, issues that it's dealing with, things that it's thriving with, just the general knowledge of that particular country. If you're interested in international relations at all, I studied international relations in graduate school, so I have a particular interest in it. Then it is a great book, especially for more beginners, or if you don't know a certain region. I did really enjoy reading it and learned a lot of good information about it. Next is two books in a series. The first one is Love Lists and Fancy Ships, and the second is Luck and Last Resorts. This is a romance book, and the main character, she works on a catamaran, so she lives in Florida. This book is not set somewhere in the faraway destination, but she does work on a catamaran, so they do travel a bit on this catamaran for work, and she lives in Florida, and I thought that it was a very cute romance book that had some aspect of travel to it. And then the second book is off of The Best Friend. The next is On Honeymooners by Christina Lauren. I really love Christina Lauren. They're actually an author duo, so they're two different people that write this book. Romance is one of my favorite genres to read about. It is an enemies to lovers trope, if you enjoy that. And they end up going on a honeymoon to Hawaii, but they didn't mean to go on this honeymoon. They are not married, they're enemies, but it just happens to happen that way because the main character, her sister is getting married, and her sister's the one that tends to get everything to go her way, and the main character does not have everything go her way. Everything goes wrong in her life. But for the first time, the sister gets sick, like horribly sick, at her wedding. It was food poisoning, and so she's unable to go to her honeymoon, which is already all paid for. She cannot get her money back, and she tries, and it's just not doable. So if no one takes this trip, it's just gonna go to waste. So the only two people who don't get sick, the sister and this enemy guy, they go on this honeymoon, and you'll see. So it's really cute book, a great beach read. I read it in Florida and pretended I was in Hawaii on the beach and loved it so much. The next one is Secrets of the Sprakar, if I'm saying that correctly. Iceland's Extraordinary Woman and How They're Changing the World. This is a nonfiction actually written by the First Lady, who's married to the President of Iceland, and she does a lot of work herself. She doesn't just stand there and look pretty and wave in cute outfits. She actually does a lot of work for rights and just helping people in Iceland, but also all around the world, and I really did enjoy reading this book. Next, a couple of historical fictions that were set in East Asia. So the first one was Pachinko. Pachinko was honestly one of my favorite books, and there's a show on Apple TV that is based off of the book. Pachinko is a multi-generational novel that is centered around Sunjaya, who is born in Korea back before there was a North and South Korea. It was just the Republic of Korea, and she ends up getting pregnant by this man. And back in the day, as you can imagine, being pregnant out of wedlock is a big no-no. And without giving too much away, she ends up moving to Japan. Not only that, but you get to learn more about the generations that come after her. Another book is Peach Blossom Spring, also pretty similar, where it is a multi-generational book. It is set starting in 1938 in China. There's a woman named Mei Lin, and her life is going very well, but then China ends up becoming a war-ridden country, and she and her son Rensu have to flee. And then it jumps into the future where Rensu is residing and living in the United States. He moved there for graduate school, and he ends up starting his own family in the States. So you get to see the differences between Rensu being with his mother back in China in the 1930s to fast forwarding with Rensu with his wife and daughter in the United States a couple of decades later. The next one is Emily Henry's Book Lovers. This is a very popular book. It is about two sisters where one of them begs the main character to go on a summer vacation together. Now, this book still takes place within the United States, but it has the element of travel given that they are spending the summer in a different state. And if you love romance, I think it's a must read and has a bit of travel in there. This Time Tomorrow is another great book. This one actually has to deal with time travel, so not really traveling within different parts of the world, but within time. A middle-aged woman, she wakes up one day after turning 40 and is a teenager again. So this is a very interesting read. This concept has been done before in books and TV shows or movies as well, and it was quite a fun read. Her life at 40 isn't amazing, but it's not terrible. She likes her job and she's just kind of happy at the place that she's at, but she's not thriving. But her dad is sick in the hospital, and so that of course has been very hard on her. But when she turns 40, the next morning she wakes up and she is around 16 again. She's living at home and her father is completely healthy, walking and talking and not in the hospital. And it is, as you can imagine, such a surreal experience for her, and she's able to live life as a teenager with this mindset of being 40 and knowing the future and knowing how precious life is. And she's really cherishing her time with her father, asking questions to her father that she wished as a 40-year-old she asked more about. And it's just a very heartwarming read that makes you just pause and think about life and living it to the fullest. And although it doesn't have to do with traditional travel in the sense, it has to do with time travel. So I thought that would be a fun book to add into this mix. The next one is called Border Crossings: A Journey on the Trans-Siberian Railway. I loved this book so much. It is actually an illustrated book, so I highly recommend getting the physical book. I believe it's by Emma Fink, and she did the Trans-Siberian Railway with her husband a couple of years ago. That is one of my top things that I want to do, is go on the Trans-Siberian Railway in Russia. I want to do it so badly, from Moscow to Vladivostok or the other way around. And she went on it and just completely documented her travels and drew pictures throughout her journey and the different stops that she had. I just loved reading this book so much. I read it so quickly. It was a beautiful read. The next book is Hostage. So this one, I'm a bit crazy and I read it while on a plane, and it is a book about a hostage situation on a plane. My dad thinks I'm crazy, but I knew that the plane wasn't going down due to mechanical issues. I knew it was involving people being the issue, so it made me feel better about reading on the plane. I don't know why that's the case with me and how my brain works, but it was a very interesting plot twist for the hostage situation. I really didn't know what to expect, and it makes sense why the people held the plane hostage, but of course they went way too far. Like, no matter what, you should not hold a plane of people hostage. But I did enjoy this book a lot, and thrillers are my second favorite genre after romance books, so it was a fun thriller to read. The next one is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foyle. Obviously this one is set in Paris, so a book set in a different country, so that's a fun read for travel lovers. And this woman goes out to Paris to live in her brother's apartment at the time. She gets there, he's nowhere to be found, and his apartment is in this, well, apartment building, communal living. She's getting to know other people in this apartment complex, and of course it is a beautiful apartment given that it's Paris and everything there is probably beautiful. Well, I've been in Paris, but very briefly, but by the way the book makes it sound, it's a beautiful, amazing apartment complex, and the sister doesn't know how the brother can afford to live there. But the main thing is he's not there, and she doesn't know what happened to him, and people there are being very suspicious. And so it's a thriller again, but I do recommend reading this book. Now, for a nonfiction book, I recommend really anything by Bill Bryson. He's a great travel writer, probably one of the most popular travel writers out there. I read, for example, In a Sunburned Country about his time in Australia while I was in Australia, but he's written so many different books throughout the years, and I should probably read a couple more of his books. He's even written some non-travel books as well, but travel books are definitely his main genre. Now, one of my top books that I like to recommend for travel lovers, What I Was Doing While You Were Breeding. It's such a funny title, but it is essentially a memoir about a woman that just travels all the time, travel obsessed. She's one of those women who's in their 20s or 30s that just has no interest in being settled or being married or having kids or anything like that. She just wants to explore the world and travel. And I feel like that is a pretty big genre of people that's kind of coming up. You're seeing more and more women who aren't wanting to go down this traditional path and get married by X age and having kids. And no matter what you want to do, it's totally up to you, as long as, you know, you're not forcing other people to live life a certain way or living your life a certain way to please someone else. I know, easier said than done, but I just love the concept of women just not living the traditional life and doing what they want to do and traveling and seeing different cultures, meeting different people. And this woman has some wild stories to share, especially with the men she meets abroad. The next book is Just Haven't Met You Yet. It's a really cute romance fiction novel. It is about this woman named Laura who goes to the Channel Islands on a business trip, and then she ends up taking the wrong suitcase home. And she's very impressed by what is in this suitcase and basically describes that the contents in this suitcase would belong to her dream man, essentially. So it is just this really cute story about her going around and trying to find the owner of this suitcase. And will she find him? Is it even a him? Will it be her dream man? We don't know. The next is another book by Emily Henry, and it is called The People We Meet on Vacation. Vacation's in the title, so it has to do with travel. And it is about these two best friends, a female and a male, and they're polar opposites. And they would go on vacation, I believe it was every summer, and then something happens and they don't talk for a long period of time, and you wonder what happened. Will they become friends again? Will they not? Because we don't want their friendship that was strong for so many years to just stop. We want them to fix whatever's going on and become friends again. But it does involve some traveling, given that that's when they meet up, since they don't live near each other. And it is a very cute read that I do recommend. And it is, again, a fiction romance novel. The next is a memoir. I found this story to be so fascinating. It is In Order to Live, a North Korean Girl's Journey to Freedom. This girl is not that much older than me, like under 5 years older than me. And it is crazy to compare her life story to mine, given that we were in the same time period in life at the same age, pretty much. And you would think, listening and reading to this story, that this happened like 100 years ago, just given by the human rights violations and everything she had to deal with. For example, her parents would have to leave her and her sister when she was little because they had to make money to survive, but they would leave her and her sister with no food. And she just would have this wish that one day she will have a bowl of rice. That's all to her, and she will eat it, and there will be no amount of rice that's enough to ever fill her. She was just always hungry. And again, it's just wild to think that this was all happening while I was here in the United States, living a completely different reality. And she did escape North Korea, and it was quite the journey. Not an easy one at all. It was just so wild to read about, and after I read it, I did more research on her specifically and watched some YouTube videos on her, and it's just so admiring the strength she has and that it took for her and her family to escape. It's just wild. I highly, highly, highly recommend reading it. The next is Wish You Were Here by Jodi Picoult, if I'm saying that right. This book is a book written in the pandemic. Like, it's based on the pandemic, so if you're okay reading about the pandemic, then go ahead and read this book. If it's still a bit too soon, then don't. But I really enjoyed this book. It is actually set between the United States, where the main character and her, I think it is fiance at the time, live, and they are meant to go to the Galapagos Islands. Now, I went to the Galapagos Islands earlier this year. It was one of my top destinations I wanted to go to, and this book definitely helped me want to go to it more. And someone on my trip was actually reading this book while in the Galapagos Islands, and if I knew I was going this year, I would have waited to read it while there. But it's fine. But it is just a really great story where most of it is really set in the Galapagos, and you get to learn more about the culture there and the people. I don't want to say anything else to give anything away, but I really liked it, and it was my first book actually that I read by this author, and I know she's written many books, so now I want to read more of her books because it sparked my interest in her. The next one is I Will Always Write Back: How One Letter Changed Two Lives. This one is a memoir, I would say. It is definitely nonfiction. It was very cute. I read it multiple years ago, but it is about two pen pals, and the two pen pals, the girl is in America and the boy is in Zimbabwe, and it just formed into such a beautiful friendship and spanned so much longer than what this assignment was originally supposed to do, and they just became lifelong friends, and you get to read their letters to one another, and it is just such a heartwarming and cute read. Probably out of all these books, this is the most just cozy, heartwarming read out of all of them. I thought it was adorable. I gave that book to a friend to read afterwards because I was like, I have to share this to someone. It's so cute. And I do definitely recommend that book. And the next one, Disappearing Earth. It is a book set in Russia. I love books set in Russia, obviously. And it is actually set in Kamchatka, which is a peninsula that goes off of eastern Russia, so definitely not as popular of a destination. It is a thriller, my second favorite genre. And there's these two sisters who just are going about their daily lives in Kamchatka. I believe they're in grade school. They're around like 9 and 11 or so. So just old enough to walk home possibly. Guess it depends on the parents and where you're living, and take the bus, but still very much a child, and they go missing. And everyone's frantic. This is a very safe area. This never happened. And people are just trying to figure out what happened. Given the shape of Kamchatka, given that it's a peninsula, the only way that they could have left Kamchatka is if you go north, because it's also a bit of a more remote area. There's only like a couple of roads that go up north, and no one saw anything, and everyone's just so confused of what happened. And the last book is My Year Abroad. Now, this is the one book out of this entire list that I've not yet read, but it's on my list. And I just thought I'd add it because it is very much a book about being abroad and traveling. This is a story about a young American life that was transformed by an unusual Asian adventure. So it is a college student that meets a Chinese American entrepreneur, and they just decide to basically go on a year abroad across Asia. And he just has so many different eye-opening experiences that changes his view on life and the world, and just compares Western attitudes, ideologies, ways of living versus Eastern. And I just think it would be a really incredible and interesting read. And that has been my list of books that travel lovers or people that love just anything international, whether it be international relations or just different people's lives in different countries. So I hope that you found some good reads from this list. If you've read any of these books, let me know. And if you have any recommendations for me, also let me know, because I am still constantly reading, love to read. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a great day or night whenever you're seeing this.